So, as far as I can see, we are live on YouTube. Yes, we are. So, good evening, everybody. Good evening to those who are on Zoom, and good evening to those people who are on YouTube. It's good that you're all here. It is Tuesday, the 15th of March, and it's 7:30. And we're looking at the value of respect this evening. So it's good to see everybody. Like I said, on Zoom. For those who are watching on YouTube, if you want to send me a text, just so I know you're there, I don't know who you are, that would be great. For those who are watching as a replay, and you're watching it after today, it's good that you're watching the replay. Hope you're well. And I pray that you'll get something out of what we're talking about this evening. So we're going to start straight away because of time. The value of respect is what we're looking at. And again, I'm just going to give a very short explanation of the value, really, or what values are. Because if someone's watching this for the first time, it just gives a bit of a foundation on what values are. Now, the word value is a principle or a foundation that influences and directs the way we live our lives and how we respond to people and circumstances. So when we have a particular value in place, it will affect the way we think, it will affect our habits, and it will affect our behavior. So, before we are, in this case tonight, disrespectful to somebody or about something or about someone, if we hold dear to the principle, the value of respect, it should affect the way we think and eventually the way we behave, so that we wouldn't behave in a disrespectful manner. Hey, Judith. I know. Yeah, thank you for your text. Good that you're on. So what I'm going to do just before we start, I'm going to pray, and then we should be able to get into the value. So, Father, thank you for this evening. Lord, I just pray you'd think through my mind, speak through my mouth, and I pray that you'd bring revelation, challenge, teaching to the people who are tuned in and watching through whatever means that they are. And I thank you that people will benefit this evening from what is said and what is taught. So, amen. And let's get straight into it. So, respect. I'll give you a definition. I'll start with a quote to start with by a lady called Dawn Yoder. Some of you will have heard of that lady's name. But respect is recognizing that someone has value and treating that person accordingly. Respect is recognizing that someone has value and treating that person accordingly. In reality, respect starts with respecting ourselves, and in turn passing on that respect onto other people, and by treating them in a way that we'd like to be treated ourselves, irrespective of colour, irrespective of gender, irrespective of age, irrespective of nationality, irrespective of culture, irrespective of who you are, where you're from, what you believe, what you think. We respect people because we recognise them as someone who has value. Now, the meaning of the word respect, to give an official definition, means a deep admiration for someone or something. A deep admiration for someone or something. Secondly, I like this, a bit of an interesting way of saying it. Due regard for the feelings, wishes, and rights of another person. We have due regard for the feelings, wishes, or rights of another person. And then thirdly, the word respect means to honor another person, to have high respect and to have great esteem for that person. So like I did last week, some synonyms of respect would be thoughtfulness, consideration, courtesy, importance, and some antonyms, in other words, the opposite of respect, would be to despise someone or to have contempt for somebody. Now, you may sit there and say, well, I don't despise anybody. But my question would be, do you respect everybody? because we may not despise someone, but we may not actually have respect for that person either. So we were sort of in no man's land, we're in limbo. And what we need to do as people, we need to build respect for people, to build honor for people. And I think, if I have to be honest, I think this is what is lacking in the English culture, very much so. When I go overseas, even to Europe or in Africa, their cultures of having respect for people, respect for their elders, that was around when I was a young lad in the 70s. If you were a child, you would respect your elders. If you did, you had a clip around the earhole, whereas now it's the complete opposite. It's more fashionable to be, full of hate and, disregard for anybody who's older than you. So as a culture, I think in England, at times we fall short of giving honor to people and being respectful to people. And we often see that anybody who's different to us is wrong. And that's not, as we know, that's not the case. In fact, I had a conversation today with a man who is from Hong Kong. He's a Chinese guy, as they know. Hong Kong is owned by the Chinese government. So he classes himself as a Chinese, and he was saying that over in England, since he's been here, his dad owns a Chinese restaurant, surprise, and a very good Chinese restaurant, if I may add. But he was saying how from in Hong Kong, he said the respect that is drilled into you as a child growing up for other people and other cultures, for elderly people, he said he's of great importance in families. And I said, well, that used to be the case in Britain, but it's not the case so much anymore, which I think is a shame. And even within the church, I think respect and honor is lacking at times in certain places. And I'm going to qualify that as we go on. But let's turn to our Bibles. Like we've done before, I'm going to give you a few verses from the Bible and explain some various things. Hi, Jane. There's another one who's just messaged. Yeah, please, that you're on. Let's go to 1 Peter in the New Testament, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 17. And I'll start with this verse, really. And I'm reading from the Amplified Bible, because it amplifies it, of course. 1 Peter 2, verse 17. Show respect for all people. Treat them honorably. Love the brotherhood, in brackets, of believers. So love fellow believers, fear God, and honor the king. Or in our case, it would be honor the queen. Show respect for all people. And I think that's the basis that we've got to have. And I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room in a lot of cases, because I think, the relationship between white people and black people, or white people and Indian people, or Indian people with Eastern European people, all these various different cultures and nations, that to me, there seems to be a lot of animosity towards them. Even, I was having a conversation with someone about the Ukrainian families coming over to Britain, and homes opening up for families to stay with them. And I've heard some people say, oh, you don't want a Ukrainian person in your family. There could be a mass murderer. And they were being very genuinely sincere in their belief that anyone who was not English was a mass murderer. And I'm like, are you on a different planet? Just because someone coming from, I said, just imagine if the UK was at war and we needed the compassion of another nation to help us, and they treated us like that. Where would that leave us as a nation? I said, we have got to extend the hand of compassion to help people in need, irrespective of where they're from and what they are. So he says there in 1 Peter 2, show respect to all people. Let's go to the book of Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians 6, verses 2 and 3. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. Now, I don't want to spend the evening talking about families and family setups, but I think the basis of society is family. And if we as families don't teach people to honor their parents, their mothers and fathers, I think that's the first thing that's going to bring negative consequences to the society that we live in and within the church. So he says there, honor your father and mother, that it may be well with you, that you may live long on the earth. So to me, if you put, I've got a maths brain, so I look at that as a formula. Let's take away, let's put everything in the negative. So if you don't honor your father and mother, it will not go well with you and you will not live long on this earth. That's what it says to me. If you do honor your father and mother, you will live long on the earth. If you don't honor your parents, you won't live long on this earth. So, we don't like to hear things like that because that puts a responsibility on our shoulders to have to honor people. Now, he doesn't say honor your father and mother because they're perfect. He just says honor your parents. Now, most of us are children. Most of us will become parents. And we know that none of us are perfect. We never were perfect and we never will be perfect. But he just says honor your parents, honor your father and mother. Have great esteem and respect your parents. That, I believe, is the foundation for us as people, for the church. Yeah, because we need to be respectful. Let's go to Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Philippians 2, verse 3. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Now, I said that respect was to have great esteem, to honor another person. And he says there in Philippians 2, let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. So we should always think highly of other people. In fact, more highly of them than we do of ourselves. And yet, quite often, we look at people and we judge people and we say, you know what, you're a bit of a plonker. I'm better than you. No, you may not say those words like I do. I'm a bit direct, but but we're thinking it. I'm glad I'm not like you. You were at the end of the queue when God gave out brains, weren't you? I'm glad I'm not like you. And yet God is saying here, let us esteem others better than ourselves. Doesn't say esteem others because they are better than you or esteem others because you're better than them. He just says, let each esteem others better than himself. End of story. Now, let's go to another one. Let's go to Romans 12. I've got a few, and then I will crack on to some practical aspects of the word respect and how it's going to affect our lives. Romans chapter 12, verse 10. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love in honor. Yep, that word respect said to honor another person. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love in honor, giving preference to one another. Giving preference to one another. In other words, putting other people first. And yet, I love it when you're in the queue in the shop and it's busy and everybody has to push you out the way to get there first. When there was a shortage, when COVID was on and you were allowed to go out the house once a week to do your shop, and you go there and there was one roll of toilet paper left on the shelf and people were getting into a right strop over who was going to get that toilet roll first. I didn't see people preferring other people. They preferred themselves and they wanted what they wanted and they were going to get there first and they were going to do their bit first. And I really don't give two hoots about anybody. And yet the Bible is telling us here to give preference to one another. No wonder Gandhi said that the world would be Christians if it wasn't for the Christians. Think about that. Because of the way we behave, we put people off. Let's go to the book of Lamentations in the Old Testament, Lamentations. And I've cheated here because I've actually got the page number written down in my notes, because I knew that when I had to find it, I wouldn't be able to find it. So Lamentations chapter 4, verse 16. Now, this is a bit of a scary one. Lamentations 4, verse 16. It said, the face of the Lord, and in some translations, it says the anger of the Lord. The anger of the Lord scattered them. He no longer regards them. The people do not respect the priests, nor show favor to the elders. So God is angry, and he no longer regards people, certain people, because they do not respect priests and do not show favor to the elders. And we know that years ago, if you were a pastor of a church, you were held in great high esteem. Now, if you're a leader of a church in whatever form, you're at the bottom of the pile. You're actually treated with contempt in a lot of places, with no respect. Now, some of that is people's own making, because they haven't behaved in a good way, and they have given a bad impression, and they haven't behaved the way Jesus would have wanted them to. But nonetheless, it says here, the anger of the Lord scattered them. He no longer regards them. The people do not respect the priests, nor show favor to the elders. Interesting, that one. Interesting one. I remember when I was in Nigeria just before the lockdown. So it was November 2019 when COVID came in March 2020. And I was in Nigeria, and I remember going to a church in Ilorin. And it's a beautiful state, actually, the Kwara state. But I was in a church there in Ilorin. And before I got up to speak, a young lady with a basket threw rose petals on the floor as I walked up on the stage. Now, I looked at that, and that's never happened to me before. That's the only time that's ever happened to me. And I thought, oh yeah, it's just the African culture. But then it made me think, because I thought what they're doing, they're respecting the person who's coming to speak, the man of God, as I would call it. In England, we wouldn't put rose petals on the floor. We'd probably put horse manure down and say, get up there, you thing, and get on with it. The complete opposite. And yet these guys knew what they were doing, and they were showing respect to the person who's going to speak. That is why I think sometimes in this country, we've gone to the other extreme of not being bothered and not showing respect. We say, oh, of course I respect you. Well, if that's the case, show it. No, I'm not saying that's what you've got to do for me, but I'm just saying that's what we are lacking as church people, as Christian people, the lack of showing respect where it's due. Let's go to Psalm 40. The 40th Psalm, chapter 4. Psalm 40, verse 4. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust and does not respect the proud, nor such as turn aside to liars. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust. Blessed is the man who does not respect the proud. Up until now, I'm always speaking from a proactive way of showing respect to people. And yet here, it's saying the complete opposite. It's saying, if God is the one in whom you trust, don't respect the proud. Don't respect the person who lies. So being respectful to somebody is just as important as withholding respect for somebody who doesn't tell the truth, who's proud, who lies. So we got to be careful. You know, that word there, the proud, is a person who has a high opinion of themselves. Yeah, that's what if you look at the word proud, what does that mean? someone who has a high opinion of themselves. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 17. Isaiah chapter 17, verse 7. Isaiah 17, verse 7. It says, in that day, a man will look to his maker. So today we will look to our maker, our God, and his eyes will have respect for the Holy One of Israel. So here the encouragement comes at in that day is today. So now he's saying that we should be looking to God with respect, with great honor. Now you'd say, well, isn't that obvious? Well, sometimes I think we are guilty of doing nothing. They talk about the sin of commission and the sin of omission. In other words, you sin because you've done something wrong, but sometimes we sin because we don't bother to do something in the first place. And I think that sometimes we are guilty in church that because we've been taught so often that God is our friend, sometimes we lack that respect that God is due, because we see God as our bestie, as opposed to the Holy One of Israel. Let's go to Hebrews. Just a couple more. Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 9. Furthermore, we have had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? In other words, we respected our parents, our fathers, but he's saying there that if we could respect our fathers, then we should be giving greater respect to God. Now, I appreciate for some, they may have had a bad example as a father or no father figure at all in their life. So it becomes a greater challenge for those who are in that position, because they've got to learn about God as their father and learn about giving him the respect, which for some can be quite difficult, because there's probably more contempt in their heart because their father was missing, or their father abused them, or whatever. So that value of respect now, the phrase is, this is where the rubber hits the road. How is this value of respect going to have an impact in our life? How is it going to change the way we think? How is it going to change our habits? How is it going to change what we do? Because some of us, we could have a boss who's not worthy of respect because of the way they behave. But the Bible still encourages us to respect the person, which at times can be a challenge, because we'd rather do the complete opposite. Let's go to Psalm 103, and I'm going back to the Amplified. So if you wonder why I'm on my phone, it's because I've got the Amplified version on my phone. Psalm 103, verse 11. For as the heavens are high above the earth, so great is his loving kindness towards those who fear and worship him with awe-filled respect and deepest reverence. For as the heavens are high above the earth, so great is his loving kindness towards those who fear him and worship him with awe-filled respect. So when we learn to respect God, when we learn to respect people, because I always say our position as people who are born again, we have that relationship with God, but we have relationships with people. And our relationship with God should be affecting our relationship with people. So God says his loving kindness is great towards those people who fear and worship him with awe-filled respect and deepest reverence. So, if we grew in our respect for God and became more aware of him, and we didn't just see him as our best mate around the corner, but if we saw him as the Holy One of Israel, as God Almighty, then I think we would grow in respect for him. And the final one in these verses is going back to 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 18. Servants, now we are all servants, we are bond servants. He says that in the epistles. Servants, be submissive to your masters with all respect, not only to those who are good and kind, but also to those who are unreasonable. How many of us have ever had a boss who was unreasonable? Yeah. Does that mean we can treat them badly? He says here, be submissive to your masters with all proper respect, not only to those who are good and kind, but to those who are a pain in the bum. No, sorry, he doesn't say that. He says to those who are unreasonable. Maybe the first version was better. Yeah. So even when we find people who challenge us, because, some people just know how to push the buttons in our lives to irritate us. Even when we find those people, we've still got to learn to be people of respect. Now, a respectful person, let me just give you some characteristics of a respectful person. Respect affects how others feel about us. If we don't respect family, peers, or ourselves, it becomes difficult to build a relationship with other people successfully. So I think the starting point for a lot of people is learning to hold themselves with respect and high esteem. Because I said at the beginning, let me just read the definition. He said, respect is recognizing that somebody has value. So the first thing we've got to do is recognize that we as people are valuable people. We have value and we've got to respect ourselves. And that is the foundational block for us to have good relationships with other people. And as I'm sure some of you know already, respect is earned one decision at a time. It takes a long time to build respect for people to respect you, but it takes just a second and a stupid decision to lose somebody's respect for you. It takes a long time because respect is earned. You can't force people to respect you just because you want them to and you think they should. It's something that we've got to earn. And it comes, as I said there, one decision at a time. We think, or some people think, popularity, money, and connections will create respect for you. Oh, I respect that man because he's a millionaire. I respect that footballer because of his gifting and the way he can kick a bag of air around a football pitch. Do those traits really cause us to respect people, or is respect earned through kindness, fairness, and integrity? In fact, my question to you would be this: if those who knew us best respect us the most, we must know that we're doing something right. Think about it. If those who know us best respect us the most, we must know that we're doing something right, because those people who know us the most know our weaknesses and know our funnities, because we've all got them, our strange characteristics that make us unique. But if those people who know us still respect us, then we must know we're doing something well. Respect is an attitude that we choose regardless of any relationship towards other people. And we have got to learn that people, whether they are English or not English, and when I say that, I mean anybody across the world, white or black, or yellow, male or female, old and young, everybody wants to be respected. Everybody wants someone to show them a little bit of respect. And being respectful can be as simple as being polite to somebody. We have an elderly next door neighbor who's in the mid-80s. And when the lockdown was on, she'd go for a 10-minute constitutional. She's as deaf as a plank. She can't hear any person from behind. So if you walk behind her, you're fighting the life out of her. So you have to walk next to her so she can see that you're there, then she's okay. But, you know, just being polite to the lady next door, you want to see the smile that he brought on her face. I would generally try and be outside. And through lockdown last year, I would often go for a walk and I'd see her when I was out walking. But just to stop and have a short conversation and be polite to her made her day. It showed respect for an elderly person. You know, just listening to her and then saying some encouraging words to her would always put a spring in her step as she walked off, because she just wanted somebody to treat her with respect. And, you know, we know this, that we should treat others the way we want to be treated. You know, and self-respect involves living by our principles, setting healthy boundaries so that our relationships with people can be healthy. And that is born out of being respectful to them. Now, 6 characteristics of being respectful. People who are respectful are tolerant and accepting of people's differences. Yeah, we are tolerant and accepting of people who are not like us. That's the best way to put it. That if they eat different food, like different music, wear different clothes, we are tolerant and accepting of those people. Even when we find it hard to understand them, and we may not even agree with their point of view, we still look for ways to build bridges with them instead of building walls. Yeah. A respectful person will always try and build a bridge in a relationship as opposed to building a wall in that relationship. Characteristics of respect number 2, these people will always listen to other people. They seek to understand how people think and feel and avoid doing or saying anything that would purposely embarrass them. And I don't mean necessarily singing happy birthday to them or something like that, you know, because if you want to take this to the nth degree, you know, we'd be scared to do or say anything, wouldn't we? And I'm not talking about that, you know, but our goal is to always encourage people and help them develop. So we seek to understand them. Because, you know, sometimes a person who we perceive as difficult actually isn't difficult. It's just that we don't always understand where they're coming from. These people keep their integrity intact. They do not say or do things that go against personal values. They have humility and aware of their own strengths and weaknesses. And they're very quick to give credit to other people. A respectful person will have good manners and they will speak with kindness. And they understand that people are learning, growing, and developing, and that they are not the finished article. Because, you know, what do? We judge people by our intentions, and we judge ourselves. We judge them by their actions, and we judge ourselves by our intentions. Someone said something and we're very quick to be judgmental to them. But when we say something, I was having a bad day. So we're very quick to judge somebody else because of something they've said or done, because of their action. But we are very slow with ourselves. Benefits of being respectful. You will, it sounds a bit too simple, but we'll receive the respect of other people. If someone's respectful to you, it's very difficult for you to be, for you to despise that person or hold them in contempt, because they've been respectful to you. And, you know, I said when I spoke about seed time and harvest, you know, and straight away when you mentioned that seed time, we think about money, don't we? But how we treat others with kindness and with respect is a seed that we sow. Because the harvest that we reap in that relationship is kindness and respect back. even when people speak to you in a rude way, if we respond back with kindness and respect, for a lot of people, it may take a while, but that exterior, that harshness starts to melt. I've told the story before of the lady who I worked with in Birmingham for 5 years, and it took me just under 4.5 years to win her over. She was a very, she had a lot of walls built, a lot of hurt in her life, a lot of anger, and she was just in a perpetual bad mood from the moment she walked in till the moment she left the office. And I tried day after day. I would make a tea. I would go and fetch a toast on a morning. I would do all sorts of things. And it took short of 4.5 years for me to win it over. When I left the company, she was the first one to give me a big hug and a kiss and say, I'm going to miss you. And we actually became good friends. Now, that was because even though she treated me with contempt, I was sowing seeds of respect and kindness back to her. And that is a totally true story. When we're respectful to people, I fully believe that doors will open to us. The Bible encourages us to be a source of encouragement. He never encourages us to be a source of discouragement, does he? And when we respect other people's views and beliefs, at times it removes unnecessary conflict. And I'm all about that. I don't really want conflict with people all the time. I may not agree with them. I may not like their viewpoint, but I'll still be respectful to the person, even if I don't agree with their view. Like all you Wolves fans out there, I have a lot of respect for you, Steve, even though you are a Wolves supporter. Being respectful, we will grow and develop our potential. How? Why? Because we are honestly judging our own ability and what we bring into the relationship with somebody. And that will enable us to be a source of encouragement to them because we're respectful. And, every person we know has something to offer, something to give, a gifting that God has put in them that's going to benefit other people. And if we show that person contempt, or we despise that person, don't show them respect, that person is going to feel that they're going to have to withhold that gift. They may not realize that's what they're doing, but they don't use that gift that God has given them to be a blessing to anybody else. So our disrespect for them shuts them down. When in fact, we could be respectful to them and be an encouragement to them so that they would grow. How can we grow in being respectful? 7 ways here. And I've already said one of them, but I'm going to repeat it again because it's worthy of repetition. It's what I call the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. Treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. Discipline yourself to consider another person's feelings before making choices. Avoid embarrassing, insulting, or belittling others and their culture. Yeah, now I know, going back over the years, I appreciate the English humor is misunderstood by a lot of people. But I think it gets a bit too far when we start to be disrespectful to other cultures and disrespectful to the upbringing of other people because it's different from our own. That's just my take. There's having a laugh and a joke, and then there's that fine line where we start to be disrespectful. And that's what we've got to be aware of, so that we check ourselves before we overstep the mark. Because it may be funny, but it may be disrespectful. And that person then gets hurt because of our lack of respect and actually our lack of understanding and our lack of wisdom in that relationship. And then it ruins the relationship. So we have to be very careful with that. But you can't go far wrong by treating others as you want to be treated yourself. Secondly, always approach a situation with humility. Take control of your pride, and for some, take control of your ego, and seek to be a peacemaker with people. Don't allow your degree of kindness or the way you serve other people to be affected by what they could do for you. In other words, don't be respectful to the rich person and be disrespectful to the homeless man on the street. Don't be respectful to the man who turns up in an expensive suit driving a Mercedes, but be disrespectful to the person who wears old clothes, who smells. We show respect to all people all the time. And, we have to be careful that we don't treat people with a title or position with respect, and those people who don't have a title and don't have a position without respect or with disrespect. Thirdly, listen to other people. Again, you'll have heard this, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Most of us have 2 mouths and 1 ear. Give attention to people when they're speaking to you. I will never forget, Jenny and I was in a church. I won't say where, but it was in England. And I'll never forget, one of the leaders came to speak to me, and he did this week after week after week. I wanted to punch his head. He would come to me, shake my hand, and whilst he was shaking my hand, he was looking over me to see who else he could talk to. He wasn't paying any regard to me at all. I could have told him anything, and he would, yeah. He's shaking my hand, and he's looking at Sarah over there, or he's looking at Steve over there, because I want to go and talk to them next. To me, that's one of the most disrespectful things a person could do. If I'm talking to you and I'm shaking your hand, I give full attention to the person I'm speaking to. Yeah. And here's one. Don't interrupt. Don't judge. Don't make negative faces or gestures. I watch these things. I'll never forget, I was at a church. My mom was having a conversation with somebody. Well, in fact, I was having a conversation with my mom a couple of years ago in the church. And as I'm talking to her, this lady comes in and just butts in the conversation and starts talking to me mom. And I'll tell you, I think I must have ate something. I just turned around to her and said, "Oi, you're rude. I was talking to my mom." Blunt as anything. And she just looked at me. And I said, "You're rude. You've just butchered in my conversation that I was having with this person because you think you've got something to say when I'm having a conversation. Wait." She looked at me, nearly looked like she was going to wet herself. Then her husband came over to us and he said, "She does it all the time." And that's all he said. "She does it all the time." And I thought, mate, you need to teach your wife something and tell her to shut her mouth, because it's rude. It doesn't show respect to the people who are having the conversation. She didn't, if she was in a hurry, then she could have just said, "Please excuse me, I apologize for interrupting the conversation, but I'm in a hurry, I've got to go. Do you mind? I just need to say this to Teresa, say what she's got to say. Really sorry, thank you for letting me speak," and then disappear. That's fine, that's different. But she just butted in the conversation as if I wasn't even there and just carried on talking. Now, I shut her down very quickly, and maybe I was a bit too quick to shut her down, but it was rude. It wasn't disrespectful at all. And we've got to be careful of that, because the next one, in terms of being respectful, is being polite. He's being polite. A focused effort to remain polite, even when we're frustrated or in a hurry or with someone who annoys us. Okay? We've all got that somebody who annoys us. Yeah. And sometimes we are in a hurry, and sometimes we've just got out of the wrong side of the bed and we just wake up frustrated for no apparent reason, but we're just in that mood where we're just a bit on edge. Okay? It happens to everybody. Hopefully it happens to me. I'm sure it happens to you. But when we go to people, we've got to remain polite. Remain polite when we talk to people. And that to me is being respectful to them, and we've got to stay true to who we are. In other words, don't allow ourselves to be persuaded or manipulated by people if it's for our gain. Because again, that's being disrespectful to yourself and being disrespectful to everybody else. In other words, when somebody comes to you, you know what, this guy, if I sweet talk him, he's going to do something good for me. So I'll be respectful and nice to him. But that person, I can't get anything from them. So I'm not going to be as nice to them. That's a mark of disrespect. And we have to be careful with things like that. The final two are, don't make excuses for our lack of respect, but be willing to change. All right, that's a tough one. Don't make excuses for our lack of respect. If we've been disrespectful to somebody, sometimes it will warrant you going back to that person and apologizing. Sometimes it won't, if I have to be honest. Yeah, sometimes it's best not to go back and say anything. But for some time, don't try and find that checkout operator at Asda that you've been rude to, because you may never find the woman again. But make that change. That next time you're going to be in that situation when you're in Asda and they're throwing the food down the conveyor belt like you're in Aldi, and they're just chucking the food at you, and you can't put it in your bag quick enough. Stay patient and be respectful. Make that change so that you don't, when you drive your car with respect. Don't drive around like a lunatic, cutting people up in a hurry, driving too fast. Respect other people. Respect other drivers on the road. But when we do make a mistake, don't make an excuse for it. Just be willing to grow as a person who is respectful. And then the final one is, make decisions based on what is right, not what you like. Make decisions based on what is right, not what you like. Sometimes when you're in a position, when you're a leader or when you're in at work, sometimes we have that choice between, well, this is what I'd like to happen, but I believe this is what is the right thing to do. We've got to be respectful enough to make the godly, correct choice of what is right, which sometimes doesn't always line up with what we would like. Does that make sense? So like when I've been in a restaurant and they've served me the wrong food, or they've overcharged me, what often we would like is to pay less and not to pay more. But what is right is to pay the correct amount, which could be more if the waiter has made a mistake. So we've got to be respectful to the waitress or waiter, or whoever has written up the bill if they've got it wrong, so that we are respectful and we are maintaining that level of respect every day of our life. And sometimes people really challenge us because it's as if they are dangling the carrot for you to be disrespectful to them. If you know what I mean. Some people are just born rude, aren't they? And some people are just not nice people. But that doesn't justify. It may be harder, but we've still got to be respectful. I believe that's what the Bible teaches us when it says to esteem other people more highly than ourselves, to prefer other people before ourselves. Just that one thing from Philippians 2, if you continue, let me just read that and I'm finished, but let me just read this. Philippians 2, I read it before. I'm sure people move my Bible. Philippians 2, it says here, let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. And then if we continue reading down that passage, it speaks about having the same mind in us as was in Christ, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking on the form of a bondservant, coming in the likeness of man. He found himself in appearance as a man. He humbled himself to the point of he became obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. And you know, we may be new creatures in Christ, and positionally, we are crucified with Christ and raised to newness of life in him. But sometimes our flesh likes to take over. Yeah, our flesh likes to speak. And yet it says here, Jesus made himself of no reputation. He humbled himself. And I think at times, to be respectful to people and respectful to our co-workers, respectful to other Christians and non-Christians, we need to humble ourselves at times. And we need to make ourselves of no reputation. Because I believe that in respect to other people, it puts us in a position of strength. And I think that's important to us. So like I've done before, just to finish, I've got 4 questions for you. 4 action steps that I'd like you to consider and reflect on this coming week. So number 1, who do you know that typifies respect? Do you know someone who you would say is a very respectful person? I've watched that person, him or her. They may be alive, they may be dead, it may be an old relative who've passed away or whoever. But you look at that and think, who do I know who typifies the value of respect? The next one, bit of a harder one. Do you treat everyone you know and meet with respect? Do you treat everyone you know or meet with respect? If no, if yes, well done. If no, identify who they are, put the person's name down, and think about how you could change to be more respectful to them. Do you treat everyone you know and meet with respect? If not, if you don't, identify who they are and think about how you could be more respectful to them. Now, some of you might think, I just don't know. I don't know what I could do to be respectful to that person. They just get on my nerves. So my statement to you would be, I would encourage you to pray and ask God to give you a strategy of how to deal with that person so that you could be more respectful to them. And then the final question is, which area of respect? I've gone through quite a lot of points there. And of those points, which area of respect could you develop in? Or do you need to develop in? Well, you know what? I interrupt other people all the time. No, I'm one of those verbally expressive people, okay? Commonly called a big mouth, all right? Which I'm fine. That's the way God made me. But part of my journey is learning when to speak and when to be quiet, when to say something and when not to say something. For other people who are more quieter people, it's actually learning to speak and not to be quiet. Yeah, so we've all got our own journey. It just depends what side of the fence we sat on. So which area of respect could you develop in? So those are the 4 areas. I would encourage you to think about them, not just listen and then just say, well, that's it now, job done. I'll switch off and I'll have something to eat. But, value yourself enough, respect yourself enough to just chew that over a bit. I do a lot of my thinking when I'm in bed, because that's the place where I'm still and I can't do anything. I'm just lying there. So I tend to think in the middle of the night when I wake up. I tend to think stuff through. But think it through, reflect on you, no matter what age you are, how could we grow? How could you grow in the value of respect? Because, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this, your heart is to have a healthy relationship or healthy relationships with people. And, respect is always the foundation for that healthy relationship with people, because our foundation is built on valuing them as people, because we value ourselves. So that's me done for tonight. Those who are on YouTube, thank you for watching. I hope and pray that something has spoken to you, challenged you. And like I've said, go away and think about those 4 questions. And I'd encourage you to listen to the video, the recording on YouTube again. And I'll even encourage some of you to share the video with friends, so that they can listen, because some of this stuff, whilst for some it may not be new, it is certainly something that is very important as people that we need to apply and live out of our lives. So YouTubers, thank you for listening. And Zoomers, stay there, don't disappear. So good